The story begins with our protagonist, Jirro, who tells someone off-screen about a fight he had with some kids who laughed at him. They said he was weird for talking to animals. This unseen person responds with empathy, knowing it's not easy. However, they point out that being different can be wonderful, as it means there are things only he can do. We see he's talking to a dog named Nashi. Yes, this canine gives great advice. Years pass, and we see Jirro as a teenager, getting into trouble with some delinquents who threaten him for entering their territory, under a bridge. One of the three asks if he knows who he's messing with, warning that their leaders control this area. Jirro couldn't care less, replying that he's just a coward hiding behind his boss. This obviously leads them to want to hit him, but Jirro has incredible reflexes, quickly removing his coat and dodging the thug, then kicking him into the river. This intimidates the other two, but Jirro is more than ready to keep fighting, throwing all three into the water before walking away. That's when a cat and a crow appear and thank him, saying those delinquents would never leave. However, they worry about the retaliation against Jirro, but he reassures them he's used to dealing with this. The crow laughs at him, saying he looks unfriendly, which is why they don't approach him. Yes, this crow is too blunt. But with that said, Jirro heads home. When he arrives, an old man calls him brainless, knowing he's been using the shinobi arts he taught him to fight. Jirro sees no value in those arts, prompting the old man to throw a kunai at him. First, he clarifies something. In the Asuma family, each ancestor has inherited the great shinobi sword, one from the shogun in the Edo period, so he must respect his roots and the shinobi arts, demanding he act like a true Asuma. However, Jirro just laughs at his little sword, to which the old man asks if he wants to see how real it can be. After this commotion, Jirro fixes the door that fell, and the old man reminds him he'll be going to a neighbor's meeting tonight, telling him to lock everything up. This order is something Jirro has heard from that kid, which annoys him, thinking he can't take care of himself. Just then, the crow from before finds him, saying there's a cat in trouble in the woods. He immediately goes to find it, discovering it nearly dead. Jirro calls out to see if it responds, but something inside the cat replies, asking who dares to call it. In the cat's mind, a type of sun appears, which it calls Rago, the black star of misfortune, the devourer of the sun. It asks him to wake from his slumber and lend his power, but another voice replies they will regret waking him, choosing death over following another's orders. After this strange moment, the cat wakes up in Jirro's house. Seeing it has woken up, he brings it water and asks for its name. The cat looks at him strangely, wondering to itself if this human is an idiot for talking as if it would understand. Jirro asks who it's calling an idiot, surprising the cat. Because of this, it becomes defensive and hides under the bed. Jirro understands its behavior, as it's obviously not normal for a human to understand it. So he jokes that he's not going to eat it. Yes, our protagonist is quite the comedian. The cat remains suspicious of him, sensing no spectral energy, confirming he's human, though it has something else in mind. Since the cat won't come out, Jirro stands up to use his secret weapon, cat food. This turns out to be very effective, but the cat responds with a saying, "The way to a man's heart is through his stomach." This sounds more like something a human would say to Jirro, who then gets yelled at for not being a cat. Now feeling comfortable, it introduces itself as Rago, an immortal being, something people call Mononoke. It explains that most of the time, they take on human or animal forms, and no one notices. Yes, this sounds familiar, so feel free to comment on what it reminds you of. But anyway, back to the story. Some like them live in solitude, in the mountains, or deep in the forest. Knowing this, Jirro asks how a Mononoke can end up like this. Rago notices that Jirro really doesn't know anything, replying that other Mononoke attacked him, and he doesn't remember what happened. He just had a very long dream, and suddenly, he woke up. He saw the other Mononoke surrounding him, asking for his help, but he refused, and simply drove them away. Jirro starts to understand the situation, but wonders why he didn't help them, if they're both Mononoke. Rago replies, it's because he hates his kind, arrogant parasites, who hide their weakness behind the strength of others. This resonates with Jirro, but Rago doubts he can believe him. Jirro mentions it doesn't make much sense, but that doesn't stop him from believing it. After all, he can talk to animals, and yes, what a strong argument. Back in the forest, we see a girl named Kishimojin contacting her boss, Shiva, to let him know she's at the spot where Rago was injured. She also senses some spectral energy, so he can't be far. For now, Shiva will send the search team, causing Kishis to leave and disappear into the woods, unaware that a man has been watching her. Yeah, quite the stalker. Back with Jirro while he was bathing Rago, he notices how quickly his wounds heal, and he's still half convinced he's a dying cat. Anyway, this reminds him of Nashi talking about how affectionate she was with him, the complete opposite of Rago. He tells us that back then he was bullied, coming home from school covered in mud, cuts, and bruises. Nashi saw this and said to bathe him so all the bad would wash away with society, then told him she was glad to have met him, as she bathes him whenever she wants, asking in return that he helps others, since it's a gift only Jirro has. Rago was about to speak, but they hush him to rinse him off. After this, they go to sleep, but that same night Rago leaves. Although his wounds healed, his strength hasn't returned, so he must leave soon, until Jirro appears behind him, saying he's still limping and wasn't asleep, just put a stuffed toy there, but most importantly, he asks where he thinks he's going in that state. The cat replies that it's none of his business, as he never asked to be saved and didn't care if he died there. Jirro asks why he would say that, but Rago doesn't explain. Yes, that cat pulled the "I never asked you" card. Fed up with his silence, Jirro confronts him about talking about dying like it's nothing, but then Rago warns him to shut up, or he'll end up like Goya Holo, reminding him that he's a Mononoke, a human-devouring specter. If he understands that they're from different worlds, he asks him to leave him alone once and for all. Jirro is shocked by this, until the man from before reappears, asking Rago if he can join the discussion. This worries him a lot, but Jirro, more confident, asks the man who invited him, warning him that it's better if he leaves right now. But the man starts to transform, calling Jirro human and threatening to devour him immediately. Rago reacts immediately, jumping on Kuro to get the Mononoke's attention, then heading into the forest to make it follow him. Jirro stands frozen at what he just saw and ends up creating everything for Rago, while he keeps escaping, but being newly recovered, he can't get far enough. Since he can't escape, he puts more distance by climbing the trees. This impresses the Mononoke, as he thought Rago was in bad shape, but he didn't expect him to be this weak, catching up to Rago in an instant, attacking and throwing him to the ground. He comments that it's truly pathetic, as the legendary Mononoke, Rago, the black star of misfortune, turned out to be much weaker than him. He warns that this is where it all ends, and he'll have to leave with him. He mentions that breaking the seal that held him captive was a lot of work, and he prefers not to have to kill a comrade. Rago laughs at him for calling him a comrade, knowing full well they only want him for his power, warning that if they want him, they must be ready to die. With that, the Mononoke decides to fight to the death, and they both charge to kill, but in the middle of them, Jirro appears with the katana, cutting the Mononoke's wrist. Rago asks if he's an idiot and why he came, to which our protagonist replies that if he dies now, it would have been in vain. Rago gets annoyed that he came just for that, warning that this isn't a normal fight, but Jirro tells him to shut up, as saving someone isn't stupid to him, and when he decides to help someone, he won't leave them hanging, plus it doesn't matter if he runs or not, because they would come for him anyway. Then the Mononoke takes on his true form, praising Jirro for being so clever. However, he finds him very peculiar, as even seeing his true form, he doesn't seem surprised, plus his great skill with the sword and the stealth with which he moves. All this makes him wonder if this boy might be of shinobi descent, as if so, he will enjoy devouring him even more. The Mononoke attacks, but Jirro uses the trick of taking off his shirt and escaping. Yes, great trick. Immediately, he appears behind him and is about to cut him, but in an instant, the Mononoke disappears and then fiercely pierces Jirro. The Mononoke laughs at him for being overconfident and warns him to surrender, but our Jirro grits his teeth and attacks again, but he slips away too quickly. The bastard acknowledges the counterattack of a shinobi, saying he respects him, but Jirro can't take it anymore. Rago stands over him, to which the Mononoke suggests he eat him, but Rago warns him to shut up or he'll die. Rago scolds Jirro for not understanding he was leaving for his own good and ignoring his warning. Right now, He could eat him to regain his strength, but he refuses to obey a demon, and instead, it's Jirro who will devour him. After all, he owes him for saving him. So he enters his body, and from within orders him to open his eyes. A massive energy appears in the forest, and Kishimojin sees it, alerting her boss and sending her men. The Mononoke asks Rago if he understands what he just did, as he didn't give his power to a mere human, but to a shinobi. Jirro stands up, not understanding what's happening, with a scar on his chest and Rago's symbol, which inside tells him to react. The Mononoke attacks him instantly. Furious about having fused, Rago tells Jirro they need to kill him and that he only trusts his help, ordering him to close his fist and send him flying, splitting the monkey's body in two. After defeating him, he asks Rago to explain, but Kishi appears warning him not to move. The chief Shiva also shows up, surprised to see this. They explain to Shiva that they are a spy agency and, as you can imagine, they will take him into custody. Shiva refuses to comply, so Kishi has no choice but to knock him out. Shiva asks her not to be so rough and requests that they take him to their hospital for tests, as they can't let him die under any circumstances. The soldiers are afraid to touch Jirro, so Kishi takes him to Rosas. In the protagonist's subconscious, he meets Rago, both surprised by each other's appearance, first by Rago's aura, and second by the hole in the protagonist's chest. This is how Jirro wakes up thinking it was all a dream, and in front of him is Kishi, who informs her boss that he has awakened. Jirro asks who she is, but she just ignores him. Yes, poor protagonist. It's then that Rago appears in his head to comment on how annoying she is, surprising Kishi and Jirro. From outside, Shiva arrives to see what's going on and hears the commotion. Now calm, Shiva is glad Jirro is okay, but he is more concerned about Rago's condition, although the cat is not interested in explaining. Knowing that Rago at least doesn't want to kill him eases the tension, so they introduce themselves. The chief is named Ryusuke Shiva, and the redhead is Ichika Kishimojin. Jirro already knows they are from a spy agency, so he asks them to explain. First, Shiba asks if he knows about the Oniwavan. They were a group of undercover agents working for the shogun during the Edo period. With the Meiji Restoration, the Oniwavan became loyal to the shogun of the new government, existing today as a spy agency, but they also eliminate Mononokes, which rarely cause harm, so they mostly confront people to protect public figures. The agency remained quiet until a group of Monoke attacked the facility where they had Rago. With this explained, Shiva asks Jirro how he ended up like this. Kishi gets upset hearing he did it, thinking he was saving a stray cat, but Shiva is more worried about what people will say when he reports this. The point is that Jirro and Rago will fuse and stay that way for the rest of their lives, mainly because they don't know how to reverse it, although they could find a way by investigating the group of Mononokes. But Jirro will stay with them to protect him. This is all very sudden for Jirro, but Shiva warns him that he has already been reported missing. As a spy agency, they have ways to violate his rights, and this is also their responsibility. That said, they inform him that he will be transferred tomorrow, and this hospital will be monitored by them to prevent escape. This is how Jirro spends the day like a prisoner, thinking about how his grandfather is doing. Rago tells him that what's done is done, and if he thinks about it, the ones who were supposed to protect him are the same ones who sealed him, so he doubts he'll be treated well. Then there's the group of Mononokes that came for him, knowing they would have to face the agency. With all this, he implies that he is alone and has no allies, which stresses Jirro, so if he can't trust anyone, it's better to escape. Kuro doesn't understand what he's thinking, but warns him not to think he will save him, but Jirro already has a plan. The guards outside hear a scream on the 4th floor, and when they enter, they see Jirro surrounded by crows, whom he orders to attack so he can escape, and outside he thanks the crows, who are happy to have had fun, and in return for their help, Jirro gives them the sweets he had. Now Rago asks him what his next plan is, because they'll start searching for them. For now, Jirro isn't worried, mentioning that he needs to take care of something. This is how he goes home to explain to his grandfather what happened and that he shouldn't worry about thinking he's missing. The cat praises him for being so noble, but asks what he's going to say to make him believe him, yet Jirro trusts that being his grandfather, he will be able to believe him, but wants to tell this gradually, so he asks him not to show up in the meantime. This is how he gathers the courage to enter, but his grandfather is already waiting behind him. First, he asks how he could leave for a day and a half without saying anything. Jirro tries to explain, but the grandfather, very serious, tells him to follow him without saying a word. They walk for a while until they reach a sports center. Jirro asks why he brought him here, to which he replies that it's so no one bothers them. And with that, he hits him. On the ground, he scolds him for doing such a crazy thing. Jirro thinks it's about his escape, but it's not, as the grandfather knows Shiva, who told him he was possessed and that the spy agency is after him. Jirro asks how he can know this, revealing that his grandfather was a former member of the spy agency. Then Rago appears, mentioning that it seems strange to feel an old man so willing to kill. The grandfather confronts him for possessing his grandson, saying that now he knows what he must do, take responsibility for Jirro's mistake. That's when the old man unleashes an inexplicable energy. He won't let the agency or the Monoke take advantage of Jirro, so he'll destroy them both, even if it means taking his own life. Yes, it's extreme, but Jirro doesn't understand until he dodges a kick that shatters the ground. The cat makes it clear the old man won't stop, but his grandson isn't afraid, even if it's the first time he's seen him this angry. However, the grandfather moves so fast that he appears next to Jirro, landing several consecutive blows. He reminds him that the Asuma have honed their technique for generations, creating a lethal art for both humans and Mononokes. He also points out that he taught him to defend himself, but what Jirro knows is just the basics, and now he'll end his life quickly. This time, Rago protects him, asking Jirro if he wants to die, making him realize his grandfather really will kill him. But Jirro suppresses his power, telling him to stay out of it, recalling he said not to show up until he asked. With that, Rago calls him an idiot and says he won't protect him anymore. Meanwhile, the grandfather has a memory from the past, revealing he also understood animals like Jirro. One day, Nashi warned him that Jirro was climbing a tree to rescue a cat, and he arrived just in time to catch it before it fell. The old man scolded him for climbing a tree he couldn't get down from, but Jirro pointed out the cat couldn't come down alone, which is why he climbed. The grandfather tells him that helping is the noblest act, but he must also have the strength and determination to do it, because without both, it's just reckless and irresponsible. Until he has the strength, he should ask for help from those around him. However, Jirro asks what to do if he has no one, to which the grandfather replies that the best option is to give up. But Jirro refuses. In that case, the grandfather says he should get stronger, both in body and mind, and if he does, there won't be a tree he can't climb, while avoiding unnecessary danger. And, well, as we know, he didn't listen. So we return to the present. The grandfather tells him this is no longer training, but a death match for their goals, recalling his past as a member of the agency. He explains that in this world, he'll kill his kind, the Mononokes, and in the process, his former self, as we see him facing a giant monster, accompanied by Nashi. He doesn't want his grandson to go through what he did, and if that means he has to kill him, then so be it. Jirro understands what he's saying and admits he didn't think things through, but he doesn't regret what he did. If he got into trouble, he'll solve it himself. The grandfather rushes at his grandson with great speed. Rago shouts for him to dodge, but Jirro tells him not to worry and takes the old man's blow to the forehead, though his attempt to stop him fails. Even though he's thrown back, Jirro lands on his feet like a cat. Rago and the grandfather ask what he's thinking, if this is to prove his strength and determination, saying they only see a half-man in him. Jirro wipes the blood away, saying it's just as he said, if he doesn't have enough strength, he should ask for help. For better or worse, he's not alone now, as he has Rago by his side, and that's something he'll have to agree with. This resonates with the old man, though Rago doesn't understand what he's talking about, but the grandfather finally gets it. For Jirro, the labels of human, animal, or even Mononoke are irrelevant, as someone who can understand them sees them all as equal. With that, he comments that he's still that stubborn kid, so he won't change no matter how much he says, and he reveals his head, saying he gives up. That's how Jirro goes home and takes a good bath to clean himself up. First of all, he thanks Rago for earlier, and also apologizes for involving him. Rago comments that he doesn't apologize for getting involved. Rago says it doesn't matter because in the end, He ended up more beaten up, but he warns him to stop being so reckless or he will have saved his life in vain, finally saying that if he's in danger, he'll use his powers. Jirro thanks him, and even though he doesn't know what the future holds, he hopes they both get along. Meanwhile, the grandfather talks to Shiva, who tells him that knowing he escaped from the hospital relieved him, as his skills showed he was the person the team needed. But hey, if you've made it this far, comment the word old man to let me know you reached the end. Here on screen, I leave you these 2 cool videos just like the person watching this video. See you next time. Take care, drink water, bathe, and bye-bye.